Today I want to dive a little into the most controversial subject in audiophilia and in this hobby. This is a cable. This is an IEMS cable, the Astral Acoustics Eclipse. This is a $950 cable, and the subject of cables always comes up as controversial because there are two sides, one which insists that cable shouldn't make a difference to sound, and the other side which insists that they should make a difference in sound. In my personal opinion, the best way to determine whether it makes or not a difference in sound is to experiment this with your ears. They are the most reliable instrument, and after all, they are the instrument that you will be using to listen to music. So it makes sense that only you know whether it makes a difference for you. This cable is made of silver, a full silver construction, which means that it is very soft. Most silver cables are really soft, flexible. It also has a somewhat loose braiding, which means that it cancels the microphonic noise quite effectively, and it is not prone to tangling, to kinks. It has no springiness, as you can see, it just folds. Those are all very strong positive characteristics for an EM cable because it means that your wearing comfort will be better. The EM that I've used for most of the photos, video b-rolls, and to explore the cable has been the Sounds Blade version 2. Although for actually reviewing the sound I've used other EMs, this one looks best because it has this blue shell. So I really like the design and the looks of the pairing. But with this EM, the differences are likely not the most major ones out there, yet this cable does exactly the same thing for every single EM that I tested it with. So typically silver cables are known to create a bright, open sound with a neutral bass, and they are typically well regarded as improving detail and tightening the bass. In my personal experience, this doesn't hold true for every single cable. Each one of them has its own effect on sound. Everything changes from cable to cable, from setup to setup. It is good to experiment with every single pairing, or at least explore reviews if you don't have access to experimenting every single one of them. With Astral Acoustics Eclipse, the comfort is really nice. It has soft guides that go around your ear, but they are slightly springy but not very strong. So if you see, this means that the cable will coil around your ear. It sits pretty tightly, but it doesn't force its way out of your ear in any way. Comfort is great. This is pretty much everything. It has a 2-pin connector on my version, also with a 4.4mm balanced connector for sources, and that's about it. As far as I know, there are no options for Versa connectors or other modular connectors, but still, once you have an EM with 2 pins, especially if you have a flagship, you are good to go. You likely will own 1 or 2 flagships at most. So you'll have 1 flagship, 1 cable for it, and 1 source, or 2 or 3, because most people just don't collect those. Picking the best cable for your EMs means picking the one that has the best ergonomics, comfort, and looks for you, because those are important aspects of this hobby. Most people don't realize how important looks are in a product. I could give you a good example on that. And this is my camera setup, which actually sits like this. I have the tripod on the top because I reverse it when I hold it. So this is a camera setup. You see those things? Those are dual handles. They connect to the cage of a camera, so you can hold it like this while taking b-rolls and while filming. It's like driving a little car. When asking what I mean about looks, this is a different dual handle for that camera. This is something I picked off AliExpress, while those dual handles are from Small Rig. Typically Small Rig is the better solution, right? So they are sturdier, they look better, and they just feel much more impressive. Well, the option from AliExpress, which doesn't have any kind of branding, is considerably lighter, almost half the weight of the Small Rig. Yet I prefer using the Small Rig handles because they look a bit more professional, they look more sturdy, and although I can confirm that there is no difference in the actual sturdiness, because I tested this quite truly, I just don't like how it looks. It looks a bit frail. It is not a bit frail, it just looks a bit frail. So we can likely establish that looks don't matter in every single hobby. With that out of the way, cables for EMs typically also improve the ergonomics quite a lot because the default cables tend to either be springy, hard, or just not very flexible, which adds to the microphonic noise as noise travels through the cable to your ears, and it tends to break your experience. With something like the Astral Acoustics Eclipse, you don't have to worry about that even one bit. Cables do change the sound. This is a controversial opinion, but it is an opinion I acquired through experiments. I did a lot of A/B testing, I did a lot of switching, and every single time the results were the same. I could hear what each cable was doing to the sound, which I encourage you to do. Not because I will guarantee to you that they will change the sound, but because it will enlighten you to have an opinion on the subject after experimentation. Every single thing in this world should be experimented, even those that you don't really agree with, because then you can strengthen your point of view and you will know why you believe what you believe. The sound of the Astral Acoustics Eclipse is mostly a refinement of the original sound of the EMs. It doesn't have much of a coloration, so it doesn't really change the tonality of the EM. What it does change is how refined the textures are, and this has an effect on every single aspect of the sound. The tonality at most gets a tighter bass, so the bass is a bit tighter, more reverberated, you get more brrr, brrr, this kind of sound. You don't get like woo, you get brrr. You know, small reverberations in the bass are much easier to notice. Also, with the Astral Acoustics Eclipse, you will get a more detailed mid-range, and the detail that you perceive will be considerably higher. Textures are a bit smoother. They are easier on the ear, the grain is lower, the music is smoother and more fluid, and this creates the feeling that the music is more detailed. You are able to hear and understand more music than you are stressing about music, and that is something that can break your experience if you stress too much. The treble tends to be on the smoother and softer side, and I actually think that the cable cancels a bit of the 9 kHz peak that some EMs have. This is where metallic tinging typically happens, so when an EM has a peak at around 9 kHz, you typically hear it as a metallic, harsh sound. This cable tends to underpresent that region, and that peak in particular, it has a bit of a dip there. So with EMs that are strongly metallic, you will hear them much smoother and more enjoyable, while with EMs that didn't really have a peak, you will hear a bit of a dip there. So the sound will be ever so slightly less bright. The extension is of course the same, you get the extension that the EM originally had, but you also get a more refined texture in the treble. Despite being made of silver, you get a smoother overall sound, which is surprising, and you also get the sensation that the music is more detailed. This also has an effect on the soundstage, because the soundstage is influenced by how much information you are receiving from music. What you hear is the information that was recorded about the size of the room where the music was happening. For example, this is actually quite interesting because I have learned about it by experimenting with my microphone. My room is quite large. You are hearing soundstage in this video even though I'm recording from a single mono microphone. This is because my voice is first recorded straight by the microphone, which is somewhere here, but also my voice echoes around the room. The echoed voice travels through the room walls and then they travel back into the microphone. Because I'm using a shotgun microphone, it is mostly recording from the front, so it is recording my voice directly, but also it records a bit from the back. It actually records the echo of my room. Most instrument microphones tend to record a bit of the room and the environment that they were recorded in. This has the effect where you hear soundstage in a studio state with very precise instrument separation, and you get a very clean overall presentation, especially with EMs. Typically we have this kind of soundstage, although some companies do implement smart designs that allow them to recreate the soundstage of a concert hall, for example, by allowing the sound to travel through certain pathways, and that creates echo and the feeling that the soundstage is wider. This is one of the factors that influences soundstage. So with an EM like the Sounds Blade version 2, which is a monitoring EM based only on balanced armatures, most of the soundstage will be determined by how much information you are hearing. This means that you will hear a lot of soundstage if you hear the information clearly, with very little grain, with low distortion, and if it doesn't fatigue you, because your mind won't focus on the fatiguing elements but on the actually perceived soundstage. Quite cool, right? This means that with a cable like the Astral Acoustics Eclipse, you will hear a much wider soundstage with better depth, better instrument separation, and you will get the feeling that the music is more spatially expanded. It is not necessarily that the cable expands the music, it mostly has to do with how it presents textures, but that has a waterfall effect on the other aspects of sound. This is like a trick. It is not a DSP for sure, because it's not digital signal processing, but it is an equalizing trick, it is a processing trick of sorts, and the cable will always have the least impact on the final sound. want. That much is clear. But once you have a flagship EM, once you can't really upgrade the EM, you can't really upgrade the source because you already like it, you're free to upgrade the cable. You are free to upgrade every single component until you are entirely happy with your setup. Let me present you once again with my camera. So I try to make the experience as enjoyable as possible, so I will build my rig around stuff that I like. I typically remove this because otherwise I am going with an unicorn. As you can see, I went quite crazy with this too. So the point is, you should upgrade your setup to something that best suits your hobby, that gives you the best experience and with which you are having the most fun. I hope that you are having fun at Audiophile Heaven, and even if you don't agree with my opinion on cables, I hope that you are watching the video, enjoying your time, and I hope that we'll see each other really soon. Don't forget to subscribe if you are enjoying the content and the vibe we have. If you want to learn more about audio and my experiments with it, thank you so much for watching, and I hope we'll see each other really soon. Bye!